Hi guys. Oh, here we are, my first live. I'm really glad you're here and let's just jump right in. Anyway, writing really feels difficult for one main reason. Hi, I'm Izzy from English with Izzy, your Cambridge C1 Advanced exam preparation teacher. And if you're new here, welcome. And if you're coming back, then welcome back. Now, guys, before we start, please subscribe, like this video, and say hi in the chat. I see a couple of you have already commented already. You're here from Germany, from Argentina, from Ukraine, from Poland as well, which is really exciting. Anyway, most students fail to improve in C1 writing, not because of their English, but because they don't understand what Cambridge examiners are actually looking for. And this is important because the examiner is not asking, is this clever? The examiner is asking, does this do the task well? For example, if the task asks for 2 reasons and your opinion, like in an essay, and you only write one reason, then you lose marks, even if your grammar is great. So today, I'm going to walk you through every C1 writing task one by one, show you how to approach each task strategically and not academically. And strategically means that you follow a plan. You plan first and then you write. So you might write quick 3 notes, for example, who's the reader, what's the purpose, the points, and then you start writing. So it's not about sounding clever, it's about getting marks. Now, let's look at this example. A clear sentence might sound something like this. This causes problems for families. And this can get many more marks than a confusing sentence with big marks, with big words. So today we're going to look at essays, reviews, reports, proposals, and letters and emails. And then at the end, I'll quickly explain the 4 marking criteria, how to score highly in each one, and the most common mistakes that lose easy marks. Anyway, if you stay until the end, I'll give you a free PDF with this entire class in text form, plus 5 real C1 model answers, 1 for each writing task, so you can study everything properly at home. And a quick note, if you have any questions about C1 writing, just pop them in the chat as we go, and I'll answer as many questions as I can in a live Q&A that we'll do at the end. So let's start with the task everyone worries about the most, which is the essay. Guys, we're going to take a 20-second break to have a sip of my tea because I've been a bit ill this week with a scratchy throat. So if you have a cup of tea as well, then it's perfect time to take a sip. Ooh. All right, let's jump in. So the C1 essay should be neutral to formal, not academic, not complicated, and definitely not difficult to read. Now, neutral to formal means that you're polite, you're clear, and you're serious. So it's not a funny story time. For example, this is a good neutral sentence. There are clear benefits to this approach. Did I pop this in our... I don't know if I wrote the specific example on our PDF. All right, so there are clear benefits to this approach. An example of a sentence that would be too informal is, this is super cool and amazing. And this is where strong students lose marks. They try to sound too academic, they write long sentences, they use abstract ideas, and they choose vocabulary that they don't fully control. Too academic means big words, but an unclear meaning. So here's an example of a risky, unclear sentence. From a complex socio-economic perspective, it is undeniable that. Simplify it. Use a sentence like, there are 2 main reasons for this. And this way we can avoid an unclear meaning, we can avoid grammar mistakes, weak organization. If your sentence is unclear, the examiner cannot give you full points for content. So the best C1 essays are clear, direct, and controlled. Now, think of your reader as an educated adult, not a university professor. So an educated adult style might write a sentence, something like, this issue affects daily life in 2 ways. But when you start to make your sentence too formal or use too many big words, then it's difficult to understand. So look at this example of a too formal sentence. This phenomenon must be considered through multiple theoretical lenses. Now, let's talk about structure. A strong essay is simple. It has an introduction, two main body paragraphs, and a conclusions. So here is a simple plan that you can repeat every time. Now, in your introduction, you want to have a topic statement. You want to mention what you will discuss and also your main message. For example, it's estimated that approximately 27% of people are now working from home on a regular basis. People often debate whether working from home is better than working in an office. There's our topic. This essay will discuss productivity and well-being, and overall, I believe working from home is more effective for many people. Then we're going to have our body paragraph. So we want one main idea, point, explain, example, and then you're going to link back to the question. Now, link back to the question means you connect your idea to the task topic again. You show the examiner you are answering the task and not just talking. For example, oh, I think it's time for another sip of tea. Look at this task topic. Should cities invest more in public transport? Your paragraph point might be something like, public transport reduces traffic. And then you link back to the sentence. For this reason, investing in public transport is a practical solution for crowded cities. Then in body paragraph 2, again, one main idea, point, explain, example, and link back to the question. Now, here comes the fun part. In your conclusion, you want to include a short summary and also a clear final opinion. Make sure you don't forget to tell the examiner what your answer to the question is. Now, an example of a conclusion is, in summary, both options have advantages. However, working from home is the better option because it saves time and it improves work-life balance. Now, each paragraph has one clear main idea, no surprises, no confusion. All right. Now, we've had a look at this main paragraph here. When you're writing your essay, you're not being marked on originality. You're being marked on how clearly you develop your ideas. So a normal idea explained well is going to get good marks, and a clever idea explained badly loses marks. That means explain your ideas, support them, don't overcomplicate them. And support means you add a reason and an example. So have a look at this point. Online learning is flexible. Then we want to support it. This is because students can study at any time. And then we add an example. For example, a working parent can study after dinner. So simple language used accurately beats advanced language used badly. Let's have a look at another clear sentence. This causes stress for students. It's easy to understand, right? But when a student tries to overcomplicate things, they might write something like, this exacerbates the psychological ramifications for learners. Anyway, guys, if this is already helping, please like this video and subscribe. All right, now reviews are very different from essays, and this is where you have the chance to get creative. Reviews are personal, they're engaging, they're written for a public audience, which means you write for normal people, not a boss, not a close friend. So, for example, if you are writing or trying to write a good review, you might say something like, if you love action films, then you'll enjoy this. But you don't want to write it formally. You don't want to write it in the style of a report, which might say something like, this document analyzes the effectiveness of. And this is where I strongly recommend using in media res. Now, this is probably the most important strategy you need for reviews, so write it down one more time. In media res. Here it is. In media res means you throw the reader straight into the experience. You don't explain everything first, but you start in the middle of the story. For example, instead of saying, last week I went to a supermarket, it was cold, you could say something like, the waiter dropped a plate the moment we sat down. I don't know if I wrote this example on this PDF. Maybe I can add it after this class. Now, have a look at another example of a really good introduction, including in media res. Have you ever been to a restaurant where a child is lying flat on the floor after slipping on a slice of pizza while an elderly man is in the corner nodding off because he's been waiting 15 minutes for the bill? And to top it all off, there's a suspicious looking insect sitting in your salad? Now, that immediately grabs attention. It shows control of the language. It sets the tone. And this works beautifully for restaurant reviews, for film reviews, for book reviews. Now, another strategy you can use in reviews are rhetorical questions. You can use descriptive language. You can sound more informal. Now, a rhetorical question is a question that you ask to pull the reader in. For example, have you ever watched a film that made you forget to blink? Or do you want a book that you cannot put down? But, and this is important, don't forget the task, because every review must include a description, an evaluation, and also a recommendation. Now, a description means, what is it? What happens? What did you experience? For example, the film follows a young athlete trying to win a big race. So we've talked about what happens, and now we're going to evaluate. We want to talk about what was good, what was bad, and why. For example, the acting was strong because the characters felt real. Now, one downside was the slow start. And then we can add our recommendation. And recommendation means who should try it. For example, I would recommend it to people who seriously enjoy dramas, but it may not suit people who prefer fast action. Now, if you only tell a story and you forget to evaluate, you lose marks, because creative does not mean uncontrolled. And if you only write funny details but you never say if it was good or bad, you'll also lose marks. All right, guys, time for another tea break. All right. Now, let's have a look at reports and proposals, because reports and proposals are very similar and students often confuse them. Now, both of them are impersonal, they're neutral, interneutral to formal, and they're organized with headings. And this means no first person, no personal opinions, and no storytelling. So you absolutely should use the passive voice, factual language, and clear paragraph headings. Now, headings are short titles that guide the reader, almost like a mini title for each paragraph. So here are some example headings for a report. You might write introduction, findings, recommendations, and conclusion, and these will go at the top of each of your paragraphs. And here are some example headings for a proposal. You might write introduction, objectives, proposed plan, expected benefits, and then conclusion. Now, here's a key difference. A report analyzes a situation and it looks at what already exists. It evaluates effectiveness, It may give recommendations based on the past or present, but a proposal, it focuses on the future and it suggests new ideas. It aims to persuade the reader. So think of it like this. A report answers, what is the situation and how effective is it? And a proposal answers, what should I do next? And is this a good idea? So structurally, they look almost identical, but the difference is the purpose. So have a look at this. The purpose of a report could be, we checked the current training system, here is what works, and here's what doesn't. And the purpose of a proposal could be, here is a new training plan we should use next month. Now, if you get the purpose wrong, you lose communicative achievement marks, even if your language is strong. So if the task, for example, asks for a proposal, but you only describe the past, you did not do the task. Now, the passive voice is really useful because it sounds more formal and less personal. So if we look at the active voice, a student might write, students use the gym less in winter. But the passive alternative would be, the gym is used less in winter. Now, this is factual language, and factual language means clear facts and not strong emotions. So you could say something like, attendance dropped by 20%. Nice and factual, nice and impersonal. You don't want to write something emotional like, everyone hated it and it was awful. All right, letters and emails. Letters and emails are a task that can be a bit tricky because it's not as clear-cut if it's going to be formal and informal. It really depends on who you're writing to. And I think that's why students get a bit confused about how to write these, because they have to study lots of different styles. So ultimately, letters and emails depend entirely on who you're writing to. Some tasks are informal, for example, a letter to a friend or an email to someone that you know well. And in these, you can use contractions, you can use informal expressions, you can sound friendly and natural. For example, hi Alex, I hope you're doing well. I'm writing to tell you. You can use contractions like I'm, don't, can't. But some other tasks are formal. You might write a letter of application. You might write a letter of complaint, an official requests. And in these, you should avoid contractions at all costs. You want to try and use polite, indirect language. You want to use formal openings and endings. For example, dear sir or madam, or I would be grateful if you could. I would be grateful if you could send me more information, for example. So you don't want contractions. You want to write things like I am, not I'm. Now, one of the most common problems, or one of the most common confusions I see in letters and emails is, tone confusion. People get confused about what tone to write it in. So formal language in an informal task is going to sound unnatural, but informal language in a formal task is going to sound inappropriate. So let's say you're writing a letter or an email to a friend and you say something like, I'm writing to express my gratitude regarding your recent correspondence, and it doesn't make sense. It's far too formal for the situation that you're supposed to be writing about. And it would be so much better to say, hey, thanks so much for your message. But sometimes students also confuse the tone and they write in a really informal way for a formal email or letter. So let's say you're making a formal complaint and you say, hey, I'm really mad about this. It's just not appropriate. It would be better to say something like, I'm writing to complain about a problem with whatever it is. So always ask yourself, who is this for? Why am I writing? And what do they expect from me? Now, if you answer those questions, your tone is going to become much easier. So, for example, if the reader is a manager, use formal. If the reader is your friend, use informal. All right, guys, don't forget to start popping your writing questions in the chat because we're going to have about 5 minutes at the end, and we're getting closer to the end now. So if I can see your questions, then it's going to make it easier for me to, give you some advice and feedback before we wrap things up at the end of this meeting. All right, now, there are a couple of things that you need to take into consideration, which are going to help you in all of the tasks that you could do in the writing test. Now, no matter the task, the process is always the same. Before you write, you want to read the task carefully. I think I put this here at the beginning. You want to read the task carefully. You want to identify the reader. You want to identify the purpose. So why are you writing it? You want to identify the content points as well. Many students lose easy content marks because they rush. They write well, but they don't answer the question properly. So 5 minutes or even 10 minutes of planning is going to save you a lot of marks. So here's a simple planning sheet that you can copy. Reader, purpose, and tone. And then you've got your content points. For example, your final message. Let's say that the reader is a college principal, then the changes are going to be different. All right, now we're going to have a look quickly at the 4 different marking criteria, which is really important because in the end, your C1 writing is marked on 4 different criteria. Now, we've got content here, which means, are you answering the question fully? Are you addressing all of the points? And are there no irrelevant ideas? So, for example, if the task gives you 3 bullet points, you must cover all 3. If the essay is asking you to only write 2 of the points, then you must only choose 2 and not write about all 3 of them. Then we've got communicative achievement, which is checking to see if you've written it in the correct tone and the correct style. For example, if it's a formal task, you might say something like, I would appreciate your help. But if it's informal, it's much more appropriate to say, thanks so much for your help. Now comes organization, which means, do you have clear paragraphs? Is there a logical progression? And is there controlled thinking? Now, controlled linking, sorry. Controlled linking means that you connect ideas with simple linkers. For example, using words like first, also, however, because of this, as a result, despite this, in conclusion. And last but not least, we have language. Now, to get 5 out of 5 in your language marks, you really need a good range of vocabulary, hopefully high accuracy, and you want to avoid B2 mistakes under pressure. So accurate verb forms and clear sentences are much more important than fancy words. Now, all 4 of these criteria here are equally as important. And for each of your writing tasks, you can get up to 5 marks in each of these categories. So you can get 5 for content, 5 for communicative achievement, 5 for organization, 5 for language. So for your essay, you can get maximum 20 marks. And for the second task, you can get maximum 20 marks. So it's as important to answer the question as it is to have C1 vocabulary in your writings. Now, the most common problems I see are people writing too academically, using memorized phrases, weak task focus, confused tone, and also poor paragraph control. Because C1 writing is not about showing off, it's about making good decisions. So a simple correct sentence will get marks, but a fancy incorrect sentence loses marks. All right, now, if you want to study this properly, you can download the free PDF with this entire class written out, plus 5 C1 model answers, which I'm about to write. It slipped my mind to include the the 5 tasks here, but I'm going to be updating this PDF straight after the class. So if you click on the link, which I'm going to share with you guys now, so you have a copy in the chat. Let's pop it in there. All right, there it is in chat. Yeah, well, I'm going to add the 5 task types after this class, so make sure you refresh the link I send you in about an hour or so. And yeah, you're going to see all of the strategies that we had a look at in class today working in real exam level texts. And last but not least, please subscribe if you want more live classes like this. And guys, now it's time for our Q&A. So what we're going to do after you've downloaded the PDF, actually, before we move on to our Q&A, when you have a copy of this PDF, read the model answers once, the model answers that I'm going to add to the PDF. Read it again and notice the structure of each one. So don't just save this PDF and let it disappear forever. Write down useful phrases, highlight the strategies that we've been talking about in this class, and maybe even write your own version of the task that I'm going to write. All right, so let's say, for example, you look at the sentence, one key advantage is, and then you write your own sentence. One key advantage of public transport is lower traffic. Don't just read, but try and practice the language yourself. All right, guys, I'm having a look at the chat. Now, as I said, before we finish, we'll do a live Q&A. So if you haven't already, write out any questions that you have about C1 writing in the chat now. It can be a mistake that you keep making, something that you're not sure about in the exam, or anything related to the writing paper. And even though I can see you're a little bit shy, I'll answer as many questions as I can in the next few minutes. And while I'm answering, feel free to keep adding questions as I can see them coming in. All right. I'm glad I brought this tea with me because I wasn't feeling very well today at the beginning of class. All right, let's have a look. Carolina, what's the most effective way to self-check a text under exam pressure? This is quite a tricky one, because to make sure that you really have a text that's included everything you need to include in the exam, it's not just about how to check at the end, but we want to make sure from the very beginning that you're confident about how to write. So before you even start writing your essay, for example, you want to spend about 10 minutes writing a plan. And in your plan, you're going to write, in note form and in short form, all of the main points that you're going to include in your text, as well as examples. And this way you're guaranteeing that you're not missing anything out when it comes to the essay that you're going to write later on. And then once you finish, let's say you're practicing at home, for example, you can even use the simple exam checklist that I've popped on the PDF, which says, I answered all the content points in the task, my tone matches the reader, each paragraph has one main idea, I explained each idea and added an example, my language is accurate. So knowing what the examiner is marking you on, which we had a look at just now, the 4 marking criteria, is the best way for you to self-assess your tasks. You want to make sure your content marks are there. So have you answered everything the question is asking you? You want to make sure you're getting those communicative achievement marks, which means, have I written it in the right tone? And, is it easy to understand? Is it readable? You want to make sure you're getting those organization marks. So have you got your paragraphs? Have you got your headings if it's a proposal, or if it's a report, for example? And you want to make sure you're getting those language marks. So you want to proofread and see if there are any silly mistakes there. Double check and make sure you've included a few C1 grammar structures, maybe a passive voice, maybe an inversion. And if you're following the 4 marking criteria, then there's no reason that you're going to write a terrible text. You should do really well, in fact. All right, I hope that answers your question, Carolina. Let's have a look. How accurate can AI be when asked to check and assess the writing? It really depends on what AI you're using, because if you just copy and paste the text into ChatGPT and say, hey, did I pass, then ChatGPT might not understand the marking criteria that examiners use, and it could give you some feedback on your English, but it might not give you accurate marks when it comes to the exam. But there are lots of platforms out there, for example, writeandimprove.com. I don't know if you guys are using it, but it's a platform created by Cambridge themselves where you can practice writing tasks, and it does a pretty good job of giving you feedback on your writing tasks and giving you exam style marks. If not an excellent platform, one of my favorites, in fact, is Prosperity English, and they have a really, really good platform which gives you access, I think, for 12 months. And not only can you practice your writing, but you can also practice over 100 different exam tasks, and it not only gives you really good feedback on your writing, but explains why you're making the mistakes that you're making as well. So depends on the software, if it's been trained specifically for exam writing or not. But I think AI is a fantastic tool, especially if you don't have a teacher to help you analyze your writing. You just need to know how to train it and what to ask it. All right, you guys are making me speak too much. We still have time for 1 or 2 questions. So if there's anything there that's on the tip of your tongue, then don't hold back. Ask whatever you want. It's also pretty cool to see you guys here connecting from so many countries. We got Venezuela, India, Argentina, Poland, Buenos Aires, a couple of you from Argentina, Germany, which is really cool. All right, guys, I know it's our first live today. We're going to hopefully be doing one every week. So I'll give you a little bit more time next week to think of some answers in advance so you can come ready to fire all of the questions that you have for me. All right, last question that we're going to have a look at today. How can students train themselves to notice their own recurring mistakes? Well, the first thing you need to be able to do is to know what kinds of mistakes you're making. So there are a couple ways you can do this. Either you can get some feedback from a teacher first, especially if you're not a huge fan of using AI, to know where your mistakes are, again, on the 4 different criteria that we talked about before. And then it's just about reading through your text and having a look at them one by one. So if you really struggle with writing and you think, I don't know if this tone is appropriate, copy and paste it into ChatGPT and say, this is the C1 Advanced proposal task that I've done. Have I written it in an appropriately formal tone, and have I avoided using the first person? If you have a copy of the checklist on my Google Doc, for example, and you know how you're supposed to be writing it, then you can ask ChatGPT if you've done this in your text. And next time you write a text, you can double check, did I write it informally if it's supposed to be informal, or did I write it formally? But studying first the 4 different marking criteria is absolutely essential for understanding how to identify the mistakes that you're making. Can you please type the names of the platforms you just talked about? Absolutely. Write and, did I write it? Writeandimprove.com. And the other platform is created by Prosperity English. I don't have the website name on me right now, but they create lots of exam materials. They've published lots of books as well, lots of books of past papers, and the digital platform is top notch. So definitely something for you guys to have a look at. All right. Anyway, guys, that's it for now. So thanks for joining the class. Good luck with your C1 writing, and I'll see you in the next one. But before you go, please subscribe and just leave one comment. You might say, or you might talk about how you found this class, if it was clear, if it was useful, and most importantly, what should I teach next time? Anyway, guys, bye for now.